Gary and Matt on 1620 The Zone with John Walker, the Omaha World-Herald, the extremely talented John Walker. Good morning.
Hello. How are you guys? Love the Law and Order intro.
Yeah. Well, do we want to keep that for you as you continue to come on? We want that to be the John Walker theme.
It could, but hopefully we don't need any Law and Order music from me or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
it
feel
could
that.
be arranged.
Let's all go to court.
Should DePaul be indicted for the display of basketball that they had last night?
Bang bang.
Yeah, it was. They sure should. It was probably. I don't know. I don't want to say an anomaly of a performance for a team that's now 1-8 in Big East play. But anybody who's paid attention to the Big East this year knows that DePaul, outside of, I don't know, maybe that St. John's game pre-Christmas, has been pretty competitive in the league. And I think Vegas thought that was going to be the case again last night. I think Creighton only entered that game as a 6.5-point favorite. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Deny.
And so I think some people thought that game was going to be a little bit more competitive, and DePaul had showed signs that maybe it could be. And no, it wasn't. It was the game that I certainly expected it would be, and the Jays 21st straight win over the Blue Demons, if you can imagine
wild.
that.
Yeah, and Mac has owned DePaul. People are after Monday night are like, okay, you got to apologize to Ryan Day. Do we need to, after watching a trio of games in Vegas and where he is now, do we need to apologize to Jemiah Neal?
Ooh,
because the guy that I saw in Vegas, where I'm like, do not shoot that three, do not shoot that three. Now I'm like, man, if you pull up from the logo, I'm like feeling you. What's the difference between the beginning of the year, making the transition from Arizona State and what they were trying to do with him, to where he is in the middle of January, where I think you lose Pop Isaacs, John. Now you can say, Creighton still has a big three.
No, it's nuts. He is unrecognizable from the first, I don't know, let's say 5-6 weeks of the season. I mean, just a completely different version of Jemiah Neal. And somebody asked me about this the other day, actually. I think after that UConn win, he had a career-high 24. And they were like, what changed? I said, it's going to sound, I'm probably oversimplifying it. He just needed time. And I think that Stephen Ashworth was a really good example of that last year, that Greg McDermott's system is very nuanced, is very different from a lot of schools in the country. Certainly way different than what Jemiah had at Arizona State. And so he just needed time. I think we saw through those early games, especially, even though they were bye games, he passed up on shots. A lot of people, that was their strife at first. They were like, oh my God, take them, please. And then he started taking them, and he was missing them because he, they were out of rhythm. He didn't quite know where his shot was in the offense. And right around this time last year is when Stephen Ashworth, things started really to click for Stephen Ashworth. And it seems like this time of year is the time of year where things start to click for Jemiah Neal, and Creighton could not have it happen at a better time.
John, pretty early on, I feel like Coach Mack. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a cold right now. Coach Mack.
It's early.
I know. Coach Mack realized that. Look, DePaul doesn't have their best stuff. This is a game where maybe I definitely don't have to play Stephen Ashworth 40 minutes a game, Kalkbrenner 40 minutes a game, and started putting in some other dudes and giving them more minutes out of the Ty Davises, the Zugiches, the Frederick Kings. What did you like seeing from kind of that group of players who typically don't get as much run as they did yesterday against DePaul?
Yeah, I think Ty Davis showed flashes that we haven't seen in a little bit, albeit again against DePaul. But I think that shows you, hey, this dude, we can develop him into maybe an Ashworth replacement in the future. Maybe he has a Francisco Farabello role on next year's team. I don't know. But I think he showed flashes of being capable of that for sure. But the big thing was, one, you were able to play those guys, which means, as you said, you were able to rest Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kalkbrenner. They both played less than 30 minutes. First time that's happened since, I don't even know, UNLV maybe. So that was more than a month ago. And then the big thing, guys, is Fedor Zugic. He had that run at the end of the Providence game a week from last night, and Greg McDermott said afterward that was invaluable for Fedor to just be able to see and play in the offense in a game against people who he does not play against in practice every day. And we saw Fedor get in early and often in the first half. And then, once it was out of hand, they pretty much just said, Fedor, you're running the show, man.
Yeah.
You and Ty are going to run the show. And that will do wonders for his development moving forward, especially since Creighton needs it to happen so quickly.
Can you even describe to your colleagues the impact that Kalkbrenner makes on the defensive end? Like last night, like the DePaul guards would get near the basket and then they would see a number 11 and then it was like they had to make a U-turn. I mean, I very rarely in college basketball do you see somebody has the impact like that.
No, it's ridiculous. And truthfully, guys, I don't think I fully grasped that until late last season. And I was like, oh yeah, he's at that point he was a 2-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. And I was like, yeah, I've been on the beat for a couple of months now. Man, that dude didn't take that shot. Okay. And then they come down the floor the next time and wait, they had a somewhat open drive to the rim and they didn't want to try and draw a foul. Okay. And so you start to pick up on things like that. And it is at times hard to describe what Ryan Kalkbrenner's done on defense. Because again, the same way skeptical is not the right word. I just don't think I fully realized it. The same way that it took me a while to fully realize it. I think it takes some people a while. And as you guys know, this goes for any team in the country. If you're not watching your team every night, you really have not much of a clue.
Sure.
And so I think that's where some of that comes from. But guys, they're gonna be a top 30. Like they're 27th in Ken Pom defensive efficiency after last night. They're gonna be top 30 defensive efficiency every single year of the Ryan Kalkbrenner era.
That's wild.
That's crazy. I mean, just one guy to have an impact like that. And then, I mean, I saw it yesterday. I was watching with my buddy. I go, I've never seen D1 players pick up their dribble so much, so close to the paint when playing against Ryan Kalkbrenner. Let's talk about another guy in that starting lineup, Jackson McAndrew. He has a role on this team. It's very clear he's out there to space the floor, to hit 3-point shots, to give other guys room to navigate the paint. But John, I want to get it from your perspective. What is the next evolution of the development of Jackson McAndrew?
I think he'd be the first one to tell you it starts next off season, or I guess this upcoming off season. They've got to put a little bit more weight on him.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the biggest problems with him so far is in certain matchups, it's hard to keep him on the floor because he has a freshman body playing against 22, 23-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really limited him defensively sometimes against someone like Jamil Telford from Butler, right? Like, they're not going to put Jackson McAndrew on Telford and say, yeah, let it rip for 25 minutes. Like, no, they'd be in trouble. And so I think that is where it starts. Throwing a little bit more weight on him and in turn, hoping that helps him develop as a defender. But make no mistake about it, I don't think I need to tell any Creighton fan this. The kid can just put the ball in the hoop.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how. He kind of has that mid-range, back down, turnaround. Probably flashes of a guy who played here a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
He has that type of offensive bag. And so I think we've seen a little bit of that at different times. Last night he put his back to the basket early. And then he cut, he did space the floor and popped out to the corner. And just when somebody turned their head, he back cut and got to the rim. Though he's a naturally gifted scorer. And I think next year, when this team is going to need scoring, they'll lose Ryan Kalkbrenner, they'll lose Jemiah Neal, they'll lose Stephen Ashworth. We'll really start to see Jackson McAndrew flourish on that end of the floor too.
How would you? And we still have a ways to go in the Big East, but
Sure.
like last night watching, the mismatch Creighton and DePaul, but we're watching Butler is hanging in Hartford against UConn. And I mean, you're thinking, man, UConn might lose back-to-back games. They find a way to get it to overtime, and then they win in overtime. Marquette blows out Seton Hall, but Marquette just dropped a game on the weekend. There's probably 4 teams that you could say, okay, they're NCAA teams: St. John's, Marquette, UConn, and Creighton. But looking at this league and the way that the schedule now is going to play out for Creighton, where they really only have St. John's on the road. They've already been to Milwaukee. They've already been to Stores. How would you look at this early part of the year? How would you describe the Big East? And is it they're going to be enough to get a bump for Creighton if they get on a run here and maybe they win the regular season, that because they won the Big East, they'll get a little bit more of a bump to make up for some of those hiccups in November and December?
Yeah, let's start with the Big East as a whole. So I said that the floor of the Big East, even though I was just kind of clowning DePaul a little bit ago, the floor of the Big East is drastically higher than it was a year ago. Anybody who's watched the league could tell you that. The metrics would back it up. So, playing, I know last night, Creighton game probably doesn't suggest so, but go look at the rest of them. Playing DePaul this year does not mean as little, I should say, as a win over DePaul did last year. And I think that's kind of league-wide. Georgetown's better. Xavier has not met preseason expectations. They've hit a little bit of a stride recently, so they're kind of right there in the middle of the mix too. Villanova's obviously there after a really, really, really brutal non-conference schedule. Georgetown's better. So you have all these teams that are vastly improved from a year ago. I know Butler couldn't finish a drink, but they're in every game.
It's true.
They're in every game. And so the Big East as a whole is just so much better than it was a year ago. And I think we've seen that. Any team can kind of get any team on any night, whether that's Creighton going to Stores and beating the back-to-back champs, or whether that's Georgetown blowing out Creighton, whether that's Xavier winning in Milwaukee, or Butler almost pulling one out in Hartford. And then for Creighton, I think they've kind of started to settle in to who they are. They were trying to figure that out. Excuse me. They were trying to figure that out into December, as we all saw in Vegas. They needed a little bit more time. And then the Pop Isaacs news happened, and that really reset the clock on that. And I think now, like most Greg McDermott teams do, we're starting to see them settle into who they are and what they want to do on the offensive end. They finally picked that up. And then they finally learned, hey, we can gamble a little bit on the outside, because we've got a 7'1" rim protector, and we'll let you shoot 15-footers all day. Have fun making them. So I do think there's a path for them to get there, because the Big East is so volatile this year. But the top 4 have clearly, I think, separated themselves from the pack. Like I don't think anyone could argue that Marquette, UConn, St. John's, and Creighton are the top 4 teams in the league.
Yeah.
And so I think the Big East champion is obviously, like, this isn't groundbreaking. It's going to be one of them. St. John's has played one of the easiest schedules in the Big East so far. So we'll see how they handle that once things pick up. But I think they will. I think they'll handle it. They hung in a tough non-conference schedule. So we'll see. But there's definitely you guys seen Avengers Endgame?
Yeah.
When, like, Doctor Strange is like, there's one scenario. Yeah, like, there is a scenario where Creighton ends up winning the Big East regular season.
Yeah.
And they, I think the selection committee on come selection Sunday, if that happens, I think they would certainly get a boost, because the committee would realize the team that lost to Texas A&M, that's a good loss. The team that lost to San Diego State, the team that got mollywopped by Georgetown, like that in theory would not be the team that Creighton is.
Sure.
In early March.
John, we'll get you out of here on this. What do you think of Danny Hurley telling a referee yesterday, "Don't turn your back on me. I'm the best effing coach in the country"? Is that is there a bit of fall from grace here from Hurley with his antics over the last couple of months, or is this just the world is now seeing what the Big East has been seeing for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's probably more the latter. Like this is the stuff that kind of built this program to what it is now. Like that fiery, the loose cannon sometimes, the whatever you want to say. Like that stuff is really what's kind of helped them get to where they are now and win back-to-back natties. If you want a good example of that, look at Cam Spencer last year. I don't know if a player embodied that more than Cam Spencer did.
That's a great point.
And that was so interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard a coach say that before, but I guess you can do a lot of things when nobody else has won a national championship in 3 years. So
yeah, well, he had after he had a really good post-game press conference. He was pretty honest about where his team is right now.
Yeah,
I mean, it was really good. Then he got on Twitter and he did the meme of Falling Down, Michael Douglas's movie, which I really think is underrated. I mean, he was pretty good there. They're in a weird spot. It'll be curious when they come to Omaha, which will be dollar beer night, and that place will be rocking on the 11th of February. But they'll probably have McNeely back, so I'm curious to see how that changes. When they get into ramp up mode, February, March, and they do what they do at UConn.
I really think it'll change so much for them. Like, let's analyze it in a Creighton versus UConn game right now. You can put, let's say, Diarra on, or you could have Ashworth on Diarra. Mm-hmm. You could have Jemiah Neal on, let's say, McNeely, and then that leaves one of, what are you going to put Jason Green on solo ball?
Yeah.
It changes everything because they get a little bit more parodic. They get a little bit more parody to their offense when McNeely's in there, when Caravan's ankle's healthy. So, yeah, it's the team we saw Saturday in stores is not going to be the team that we see in Omaha on February 11th.
Yeah. John, as always, appreciate it. You're a man of knowledge. Great chat with you, and enjoy the rest of the week and enjoy Double Dip on Saturday.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
That's John Walker from the World.